Hundreds more emergency responders will be deployed in Spain after devastating flash floods killed over 150 people.
The offices of the UN Aid Agency for Palestinians are damaged in an Israeli raid on a refugee camp in the West Bank.
Donald Trump and Kamala Harris campaign in the western part of the U.S., crisscrossing the key swing states of Arizona and Nevada ahead of Tuesday's election.
The Spanish government is deploying hundreds more soldiers to distribute essential aid after devastating flash floods killed over 150 in the country's worst natural disaster in decades. Rescue workers are still searching for survivors after torrential rain and hailstorms on Tuesday devastated several regions of the country, the eastern province of Valencia being the hardest hit. Thousands were left without water and electricity, and hundreds stranded after their cars were wrecked or roads were blocked. More than 1,200 soldiers from Spain's emergency rescue units have joined regional and local emergency workers in the search for bodies and survivors, with Spanish authorities saying the death toll is likely to rise. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez pledged the government's full support to the areas affected as he visited Valencia. He urged people to remain at home, saying the situation remained unstable.
Dramatic flooding in Spain is a reminder that Europe is not immune to extreme weather events. According to a report by Imperial College London, 3 of the deadliest such events in the last 20 years have hit the continent. The document links climate change with the intensification of these events and the potential risk of more casualties.
While we can't say that extreme weather events are caused purely by climate change, we know that the severity of them is massively enhanced by climate change.
The heat waves of 2022 and 2023 claimed almost 90,000 victims in Europe, according to the report. However, researchers are also cautious about the figures, pointing out that it is more difficult to measure the mortality caused by a heat wave than in the case of floods, but that solutions do exist to prevent such disasters.
We should be able to prepare for these events. So if you've got heat waves, we should be able to have early heat warnings to tell people not to go out, to try and stay in cool places, to drink more water. When there's flooding coming, we know that we can issue flood warnings, and if people follow those flood warnings and they may have to evacuate the areas that are likely to be affected, it can take them out of harm's way and it can massively reduce the mortality from these events.
This report was published a few days before the opening of COP29, the International Climate Conference. The UN has also pointed out that on this current course, the increase in temperature is likely to exceed 3 degrees before the end of the century.
The offices of the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees have been heavily damaged during an Israeli raid in a West Bank refugee camp. The official Palestinian news agency alleged Israeli military bulldozers had partially demolished the UNRWA building. However, the Israeli military denied it damaged the building in the Nur Shams refugee camp. It said militants had planted explosives nearby and set them off to attack Israeli troops, and that the blast had likely damaged the building. The incident comes after Israel's parliament passed laws this week effectively banning UNRWA's operations in Israel and the Palestinian territories. Israel accuses the agency of turning a blind eye to militants among its staff, a claim UNRWA denies. The law comes into effect in 3 months.
So we say this very, very clearly. UNRWA is part of the past. It's part of the problem. UNRWA members took part in this massacre. Now it's time for the international community, first and foremost the United Nations themselves, to rethink and to do what's right in order to really be of help to Palestinians, instead of just sticking to their former ideas UNRWA which was infiltrated, taken over, and eventually massively misused by the terrorists of Hamas.
Multiple UN agencies have rallied around UNRWA, calling it the backbone of the world body's aid activities in Gaza and other Palestinian areas. UNRWA provides education, healthcare and emergency aid to millions of Palestinian refugees from the 1948 war surrounding Israel's creation. Refugee families make up the majority of Gaza's population. The Biden administration has said around 8,000 soldiers from North Korea are now in Kursk preparing to help Russia fight against Ukrainian troops. Moscow and Pyongyang have deepened military cooperation in recent months. Kyiv has long accused North Korea of supplying Russia with weapons and ammunition. And earlier this year, both countries signed a mutual defense pact.
Russia's actions with respect to the DPRK are not only dangerous, but they are antithetical to its responsibility as a permanent member of this UN Security Council. Russia's military cooperation with the DPRK violates multiple UN Security Council resolutions, which prohibit both procuring DPRK arms and providing military training.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said that while North Korean troops have been deployed to Kursk, they've not yet taken part in any hostilities.
We understand all the risks.
North Korea's move to deepen its relationship with Russia has raised concerns around the world about how that may expand the war in Ukraine. There are also questions about what new military technologies North Korea might get from Russia in exchange for the deployment.
Following reports of North Korean troops deployed in Russia, Belarus's leader said no one had seen any Pyongyang soldiers on the front line with Ukraine, accusing the West of inflating the fact, which may lead to escalation. Belarus has been a staunch supporter of Russia since Alexander Lukashenko, dubbed Europe's last dictator, came into power decades ago. The country has allowed Moscow's troops to be stationed within their border, acting as a staging area for the Russian invasion of neighboring Ukraine.
Нам в Европе это надо, нам это не надо. Это ни России, ни Украине, ни нам, и вам тоже, евразийскому континенту, это не нужно. Но опасность велика. Поэтому сегодня, прежде чем выдвигать какие-то с одной другой стороны концепции, и, как это называется у них, план победы или еще чего-то, все это возможно, даже глупости. Но надо сесть за стол переговоров, без предварительных условий.
Also speaking at the event, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov announced that Moscow planned to sign a strategic treaty with Iran in the near future.
Мы будем приветствовать их подключение. Серьезным фактором в укреплении российско-иранских отношений станет готовящийся договор о всеобъемлющем стратегическом партнерстве между Россией и Ираном. Договор, как я сказал, готовится к подписанию в ближайшее время. Там будет затверждено стремление сторон к более тесной кооперации в области обороны и к взаимодействию в интересах мира и безопасности на региональном и глобальном уровнях.
Moscow has not provided any evidence to back its claims of NATO or the West's intention to act aggressively towards Russia or its troops. One of the Kremlin's main alleged reasons for its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in early 2022.
At least 5 people have been killed and 4 others injured in a gas explosion at a residential building in southern Russia. The blast happened in the city of Cherkassk, in a region which borders Georgia, about 1,300 kilometers south of the capital, Moscow. Emergency officials said the explosion partially destroyed 2 upper stories of a 5-story residential building.
Какой-то хлопок сильный. А потом просто понять не могу, все начало сыпаться с потолка на лицо, видно стекло вот тоже. Я руками прикрываюсь. Муж в комнате в соседней. Я говорю, я вообще думала, что это сон.
Emergency responders say they fear what's left of the building could crumble, potentially harming more people. Russian law enforcement has launched a criminal probe suspecting safety violations. Gas explosions in residential buildings are fairly common in Russia. In August, a gas explosion destroyed a section of a 5-story residential building in the Ural Mountains, killing 11 people. The state news agency TASS said at the time that between the beginning of 2022 and August 2024, at least 7 such explosions occurred, killing more than 50 people in total.
Both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris campaigned in the western part of the U.S., crisscrossing the key swing states of Arizona and Nevada. Trump appeared with far-right media personality Tucker Carlson in Arizona and claimed to be ahead in the polls race. The Republican candidate said it was heading for great victory.
I think it'll go down as one of the greatest victories of all time. So we're gonna have an exciting time.
Trump's appearance in Glendale followed earlier stops in New Mexico and Nevada, where thousands of supporters showed up. Meanwhile, Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris took her campaign to a Las Vegas rally.
And we have work to do, but we like hard work. Hard work is good work. Hard work is joyful work. And make no mistake, we will win.
Earlier, Harris introduced Jennifer Lopez, who rallied voters in support of the U.S. vice president.
I am an actor and an entertainer, and I like Hollywood endings. I like when the good guy, or in this case, the good girl, wins.
The presidential election will be held on Tuesday, 5 November in the U.S. Already, more than 65 million people have cast their ballots in the race as of October 31.